Hi, I'm Jessica Hartshorn. I'm a freelance illustrator working with galleries and museums, and I'm based in Rugby. A great position. I was really busy, but I just couldn't do everything, and I was still trying to do everything. So because my niche is museums and galleries, I put myself where those people are, and I think that's really important, whatever sort of niche you're working in. It's quite easy to just go, I'll do it next year, and put things off where it's a conscious thing to think about what can I add to my business.
Yes, excited for this one because Jessica is a member of the Being Freelance community. We've got to know each other very well over the years. She's been along to like our Christmas dinners, to our golf days when we play mini golf in person, and many more things besides. We've even had her on co-working, painting murals in the background while the rest of us are at the laptops. She's great fun, but I've never heard her whole story. So looking forward to this. Let's head to Rugby, which is in the Midlands here in the UK, and chat to freelance illustrator Jessica Hartshorn. Hey, Jess.
Hi. Hello.
As ever, how about we get started hearing how you got started being freelance?
Yeah, so I've always loved art. I'm a freelance illustrator and I studied illustration at Loughborough University. And when I graduated, I was freelance then. But like a lot of people, I had about a million other jobs. I was a lifeguard, I worked in a health shop. I tried to be a freelance illustrator and went into London a lot. And I had like a lovely portfolio, a physical one back then that I'd taken to publishers, but I really struggled. Such a saturated industry. I really struggled when I graduated. So I ended up falling into the world of museums and galleries and ended up staying there for 16 years. And fell in love with heritage and art in public settings and started to do a lot of education with art. But after 16 years, I was really craving to get back to making and creating myself. In my job at the art gallery, I really loved helping other people be creative, but I really wanted to start to illustrate myself. So I created a secret Instagram account and didn't tell anybody about it and just started painting again. And it was really cathartic to just sort of put art into the world without anyone knowing it was me and start to find my style. And from that, I realised I might want to go back into doing freelance. So I was part-time at the time, so I started doing 2 days a week freelance just to sort of dip my toe in the water. And as I was working in museums at the time, I tried to do more work in that sector, so niching down a little bit with my illustration style. And I also got a really big mural commission, which I'd never done before, and it was absolutely huge for a big gallery in Birmingham. And that was like a lot of people saw that. It had a lot of press, and all of a sudden were like, "Oh, we didn't know you could illustrate." And it kind of started from there, really, that little seed of, well, maybe I could do this. So that's 7 years ago.
Wow. So what were you doing? So you peddle your portfolio around, knocking on publishers. Nobody is biting. So you got a job in the museum and art gallery. But what were you doing there?
So I was an education officer. So that meant that in the galleries and museums, I would interpret the collections in interesting ways. So often using art. So it might be we take a Roman pot and we make it out of clay and think about the stories behind it, like who might have owned it and what was it used for, those sorts of things, nice, yeah. With school groups and older groups, anyone visiting really. But actually, I'm a perfectionist and I throw myself in sort of full hog. So by the time I left that job, I'd done some mad, crazy things like closing the Rugby Town Centre down to run a land train around it, and we had a huge Godiva puppet from Coventry at the Olympics, and that came to Rugby first, and I coordinated that big event. And the puppet was as big as houses. It was huge. So I did some really mad stuff, and I loved that job, but I just really wanted to illustrate myself, really.
Yeah. So you create a secret Instagram, but you also got some work. So how was that people approaching you via your Instagram? Because you end up doing this big mural. Like, how did that
So I started creating some work, and I think that was about 6 months after I'd created this Instagram account that I started to feel more confident in what my like new style was going to be. And I just saw like a tender application for this particular mural, and a friend of mine had just started working there and sort of just sent it my way because she by then had seen my Instagram account, but she was one of very few people, and yeah, I applied and got it, and absolutely like was terrified because I'd never done anything so big, and it was really quick as well, a really quick turnaround. It was a theatre production that they had at Christmas, and they wanted me to paint a big Christmas mural leading up to where their sort of show was. It was going to be painted over anyway in January, so that was my sort of, oh, well, if it's rubbish, then no one will see it after that. But it wasn't, and I actually got asked back for 2 more times after that to do the Christmas mural each year.
So by then, word gets out to the people you work with, I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of, oh my God, I didn't know you could do this. And yeah, I just started to sow the seed. But I was still working sort of part-time at the art gallery and museum.
How did you step it forward? You stopped being anonymous?
Yeah, stopped being anonymous. So people started to find out, it was actually me. And I just started looking for more freelance work in that area. I was actually looking at more of what I was doing at the gallery, which was sort of project management in the arts. And I used to do a lot of teachers' packs where I'd actually create the text content, not the illustration at the time. So I was looking for those sorts of jobs as a freelancer. And the kind of thing that made me leave was I got 2 big contracts, one for the Historic England and one for the Paralympic Heritage Trust, which are obviously quite big names. And they were both to create sort of teacher resources, but it was just the text. It wasn't illustration at the time. And when I got those, I decided to leave my job. And it was only then the next job after that, which was for a museum, to do the text again. And I sort of said, I can do a bit of illustration. I won't charge you anything extra, but like, do you mind if I just give it a go, see what you think? So it was a bit sort of trying it out, and it was really successful with the matching sort of the illustrations together with the text I'd created. And then I could use that in my portfolio moving forward to obviously get paid work in that area.
So actually, even though you hadn't intended to go into museum and heritage and the arts to begin with, you had ended up with this kind of secret skills that made you extra, I don't know, what's the word? Employable, hireable, wantable, as buyable as a freelance illustrator. Like, you understood the behind the scenes at the museum.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally what my selling point is now, and I really sort of go to town on that, really. One, I'd got a network after 16 years of people who knew me, so they could spread the word a little bit. So what I mostly do now are working with museums and galleries and parks and heritage sites to create illustrations for things like trails, maps, interpretation for exhibitions. I've done window vinyls and floor vinyls through to murals in museums. And my selling point is that I understand how museums work. I understand the language they use for their collections. I understand the practicalities of what it's like to work in those spaces when you've not got much money. And if you've got a trail, like who's physically going to hand those out and the practicalities of that. So I do understand how that world works. And that's definitely been a big selling point for me. And lots of clients in the past have been on my website and read that about me and said that was the kind of the thing that pushed them over the edge to choose me if it was a tender, for example.
Yeah. Oh, what a bonus. Okay, so you quit your job as which was part-time because you feel like, actually, no, yeah, I can do this. How did it develop from there? You've got a network, but you've got to make that work for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially, like lots of people, I took anything at first, and not all of it was what I necessarily wanted to do. So I did still take a bit of project management. There was a little bit of illustration here and there. I did a lot of running and delivering workshops, art workshops when I was at the museum and gallery. So I still got asked to do that sort of thing in schools and things. And it was just a bit of everything. So a little bit of here, there and everywhere. And if I'm honest, I struggled a little bit to have an identity, because the project management and the kind of text content creation was very, very different from my illustration and my murals and that side. So I remember when I started out and I created my website, I really struggled to sort of work out, do I have two websites? Do I like split off? They seem very, very different. And it was actually COVID that changed everything for me. I was meant to be doing a lot of workshops during that time, and some of those went online. But the biggest change was a lot of museums I'd worked with, maybe in person, just couldn't open. Everywhere was shut. So they contacted me to illustrate resources for them that people could download at home and print out. So things like colouring sheets, activity sheets. I did some like constructables where you actually sort of build your own museum and things like that. And I started to do a lot more illustration all of a sudden, specifically with museums. And that was the turning point where I actually just then dropped all the sort of project management and all that side of it and really focused in on the illustration and workshops as well.
Now, your website, and this is also your company name, is Jessi Illustrates?
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you.
When did Jessi Illustrates come into being? Was it then? At COVID time?
No, so it actually started right back at the beginning with my secret Instagram account. So most people used to call me Jess. Apart from my husband was the only one that called me Jessi. And when I set up my secret Instagram account, Jess wasn't available. Jess Illustrates or Jessica Illustrates. Jessi was. And that's kind of how that name was born, really. And it still felt a bit relevant because, like I say, my husband called me Jessi and a couple of like family members called me Jessi. So as a result of that the name stuck.
So many times I've heard it's the Instagram handle if it was available. But it makes sense in a way, because that often means that the URL should be available. Like if a company already exists, then the Instagram is probably gone. So, nice. So Jessi, so then you get the website. How's that evolved over time?
So each year I try and put a little bit of money aside to spend on my business. So the first year was building my website, and I did build it myself. And like I say, it has changed quite a bit over the time. One of the biggest things is I invested a couple of years ago in working with a videographer, and she spent the day with me filming me running draw-alongs and workshops and illustrating. So on my website I now have a little video of each of those things that I specialise in. And that's really helped give a feel for what I do, because my illustrations are really colourful. I work with acrylic paint, so sort of that sense of sort of vibrancy and fun. And similarly with my workshops, I'm sort of quite joyful in my sessions. So I wanted that to come across, and I think the videos really help to sell that. But I've also now got a dedicated section for museums and galleries and all the different things that I offer for museums and galleries on my website. I have done things like children's books and I say murals. So I've just divided my website up into the different things that I do. But it just makes it easier for people like museums. They can go straight to that section when they arrive, and there's a nice little video to sort of show what it's like to work with me. And that's really helped as well.
Have people commented on the video? Because it is brilliant.
Yeah, they have. And the lady did some fabulous sort of Instagram little reels that I could put on from the video. So, yeah, they definitely do. And like I say, it gives that vibe of what it's like to work with me. And hopefully it makes me look a bit more professional and know what I'm doing. So
for sure,
that
helps.
Yeah.
Honestly, you have to check out the video. And I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, that because there's various bits to it, and also, you know, there's children, of course, in those videos. So, like, was this event you were already hosting, or did you like almost stage it? So you hosted your own events and got the parents to sign off that you could use them, and you know what I mean?
Yes. So there are some adults in some adult workshops, and they were actually part of a project. So we'd already videoed that in the project, and I went back to the organisation and the parents to get permission to use it on my website. So we actually mashed up the two videos, and then we staged one. So I've got lots of connections with art venues. So we went to an art venue, and I asked just regular kind of workshop kids that come to my workshops, do you want to be part of a video? And they're like, yay. So they came along, and I literally just ran a session. So they got a free session. I think I gave them all some chocolate, and and like a free notebook or something. And yeah, they videoed it and filmed it. So yeah, it was really fun. It was in the summer, so it was in a garden of an art centre, and it was a really nice day.
Yeah, makes such a difference. I love the fact that you put money aside, what, from like every invoice that comes in towards do you break each invoice up, or do you just thinking?
No, I mean, as long as I'm sort of getting is roughly what I'm hoping to get each year, it's not a huge amount, it's about £500 a year I put to one side to do whatever I feel I need at that time. So I don't specifically say, right, I'm going to do this year. So last year, or the last 2 years, I've actually worked with someone from the Being Freelance community, Sophie, and we've had a creative mentor session. So I've used that money for that. Previous years, I've maybe bought something. So last year, I also bought a badge making machine with sort of that money. It was a little bit of an investment. So sometimes it's not marketing, sometimes it's a bit of kit. I think one year I bought a nice pop-up banner. So I think it's just sort of, it's quite easy to just go, oh, I'll do it next year, or I'll do this next year, and put things off, where sort of having that money aside, if I get to the end of the year and I've not spent it, I'll go, right, what do I actually need? Do I spend it or do I save it? And it just makes it a little bit more of a conscious thing to think about, what can I add to my business.
You know you're doing something right in life when an investment of a badge making machine is on the list.
I mean, who doesn't need a badge making machine in their life?
No, I think that's brilliant. But you mentioned mentorship there, though. So have you done sort of much coaching and mentorship and things like that?
So through the Being Freelance community, I've got a co-mentor, Joe, who's a graphic designer, and we've been, I think it's about at least 3 years, we meet regularly. And in fact, we've just worked on a really nice book project together, where I illustrated a book for a publisher and she did the graphic design layout. Nice. So as a result of that, we actually have been like having lunchtime meetings online where we just sit and chat, really. But that's been really nice to just sort of have someone to run ideas past, or check over something, or sometimes just moan to, just a bit like a co-worker, I suppose. So that's been great. Where Sophie's very much a more structured session, where we literally looked at everything that I did, and I was struggling. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I was still feeling like I was actually a great position. I was really busy, but I just couldn't do everything, and I was still trying to do everything. So she helped me to filter out what I really wanted to do and focus on, and it's really helped. With particularly this year has been my best year in terms of working with museums.
Is this Sophie Greenwood?
Yes, it is, yeah.
So you were too busy?
Yeah, but not necessarily doing all the right things. I'm maybe not always charging in the best way. So I found that with all my bigger projects and like illustration clients and things like that, I was charging properly, but I was still kind of hanging on to maybe working with certain schools and maybe some workshops that I was arranging myself, and sort of merch that I was doing for myself. And it was still taking a lot of time, but especially the merch, where I get it printed and sell it at like fairs and things. Sophie was sort of saying, well, how much do you actually make when you do those sorts of things, and how much time? And I sort of started to realise that it was taking a lot of time away from the things I really wanted to do. And therefore, I wasn't always enjoying the things I really wanted to do as much, because the time was so pinched. So I sort of binned some of that things. Like I used to do a calendar, and I binned that. Even though they'd sell out, they just would take so long. And, you know, I really wouldn't make much money by the time they'd been printed. So I sort of really looked hard at the things that I wanted to focus on, and put to one side things that I could always go back to if I wanted to, but it's not on the right path for me at the moment. And perhaps financially it wasn't the best thing to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned Instagram earlier. I'm just wondering how you market yourself. Obviously, people are being led towards your website, which we know is working, and the awesome video. But how do you put yourself out there?
So because my niche is museums and galleries, I put myself where those people are. And I think that's really important, whatever sort of niche you're working in. So I go to things like museum conferences and have a little stall there. So like hitting like pretty much all the museums in the UK in like 2 days. I go to museum networking events. I'm part of some like groups that are for museums, and I'm often the only illustrator there. But I suppose I do feel comfortable because I understand the language and all that sort of thing. So I feel quite safe in those spaces. But I am often the only illustrator there. So I'm becoming that specialist person and the go-to person for that sector. I mean, there are lots of other illustrators that work with museums, but there's not that many comparatively to other things like children's books, for example. So with those sorts of things, I do things like postcards where you can colour in at the back, and I leave them on the tables or sort of speak to the organisers and say, can I do this? So it gets to everybody. I've done a lot of training sessions at museum events where I'll run a workshop. And again, it just really embeds in the minds of the clients that, oh, that's a good person I could work with. And they definitely remember me more when I've run a workshop, regardless of what they want me for, whether it's to do an illustration or a workshop. So I sort of do that sort of thing. I am very active on social media, but particularly Instagram with my stories, doing lots of, because I actually paint, I'm not a digital artist. I do a lot of time lapses of my artwork, from start to finish. So yeah, I think they're key things.
Do you actively follow up with the people you're meeting at those conferences, or you're like, because it's amazing, like you've got a stall, maybe you're running a workshop.
Yeah.
Are you waiting for them to come to you?
Mostly, I think. I mean, last year for a big museum conference, for the first time, I actually created a product brochure, which I'd never done before. And it actually had all the different things that I do in it and a rough estimate of cost. And it was really interesting having a conversation with people about that, because museum people don't necessarily know how much it costs to commission an illustrator. So to have a little ballpark figure-ish was really, really helpful for them, because they weren't sure if it was like £10 to like, I know, 10 grand, they had no idea. And therefore that sometimes was a barrier for commissioning, because they just didn't want to embarrass themselves by, putting themselves in an awkward position. So just having a bit of an idea within this brochure of, we could afford that, or we could apply for a grant for that. It was just more of a starting point for people, I think, to have a conversation. So that was also a really big thing. But it depends. Sometimes I'm able to gather their information so I can follow it up, or if I try and get their name and where they're from, so then I can like maybe start following them on Instagram or have some sort of connection. But it's a bit trickier it's not like I don't know, a book publisher where they're more actively giving out their details as an editor or something. They're probably doing a million other jobs working in the museum, so it's not always top of their list. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
But that is really interesting, because often I end up having some sort of conversation around putting prices on your website, for example, but you're actually printing and illustrating maybe a brochure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely brochure. I'll send you one, Steve. It's got lots of photos of what I've done. And again, it's also given them ideas, because I've done things like brass rubbings where I've illustrated the outline, and then that's been made into brass rubbing. I've painted marble runs. I've just done some lovely magnetic boards of like a doll. So sometimes I don't even think of what could be done. So the brochure does kind of give them lots of ideas, and often if they commission the illustration with me, then it can be put onto lots of different things. So it's sort of giving them ideas of how we can work together to do other things as well. So, I mean, it does always have the caveat of approximately, because obviously you just don't know what they're going to come with, but a bit of a starting point, I think, really helps them just to have a bit of an idea of if it's possible.
More to come from Jess's story very soon indeed. Of course, Jess is in the Being Freelance community. You should come join us too, beingfreelance.com. Also there you will find the course. We don't talk about this, but Jess took the course when it first came out, which is back in 2021. She already started freelancing, and quite a lot of people do this. They've started freelancing, but they're thinking, am I doing all of this right? And that's why she took the course, which is brilliant because that's why I created it in the first place. So if you're in your first year or you're thinking about going freelance, please do remember I have created a course which is both my own experience but also that of all of the guests I've spoken to over the years, now 11 years of the Being Freelance podcast. The course also includes 6 months of the community free, so you get started surrounded by other people who get what it's like. So come find us. The community and the course and much more besides are at beingfreelance.com. How do you manage your day and your weeks?
I mean, every week is literally totally different. It's very rare that I'll have more than 1 week the same. So next week I was meant to be doing a mural, but it's been moved now to the following week. So now I'm sort of rejigging my work week. But I do try and have some sort of home-based illustration in the mix if I can. So I'm at home some days and then maybe do workshops or murals on the other. But it's quite hard, I suppose, to get it exactly how you want it, because you've got to do it to their deadlines, haven't you? So I do book in scheduled blocks. So I've just been asked to do another children's book with the publisher I've just finished, and I'm kind of booked up till August. So I've been able to sort of luckily say, can we start it in September? So I do try and kind of push things to my schedule if they've got flexibility, and that helps to sort of manage my timetable. But like a lot of creative things, it is quite tricky because it is down to them proofing things on time and getting back to me on time. And it's that kind of constant juggle of if I've got a lot of clients, I'm trying to squeeze them in at different points and make sure they come back to me quickly.
How do you deal with when you have to say no?
Getting a lot better. I think it depends on what it is. So in terms of things like, I get a lot of requests from parents to do one-to-one like art sessions through my website, and now I've got just a standard sort of bit of text that I copy and paste in, which sort of says, thank you for your interest, you're welcome to come to my other workshops in the holidays that I'm running, but unfortunately I'm not available for this sort of work at the moment. And similarly for certain school workshops, that's another area that I've stopped doing, just because schools have got very limited budgets, which I do some, but I do find they're the ones that unfortunately take the advantage quite a lot, and are quite draining on my time. So I limit, I'm really careful of which schools I work with. So similar, quite a standard sort of email that I send out if I think it's not quite the right match. And then I get a lot of community groups asking for freebies all the time, which I always feel horrible saying no. And I don't always say no. There are the odd one that I will do. But again, it's sort of a standard bit of text that I send out. So I just find that takes the emotion out of it a little bit if I've just got that bit of text I can copy and paste in.
And do you leave breathing room within your week or your month for unexpected things that might come in, or you just every day is full?
I do a session on a Monday where it's just 2 hours in the morning with an art dementia group, and I often leave that as like my breathing day, in the sense that that's, I think it's like 9 till 11:30, but then I never book anything in the afternoon. Because I'm kind of out and about, it means I can't do a workshop or anything. So I leave the afternoon free. It's normally filled with stuff, but it means that if something, arrives in my inbox, or a client says, oh, actually, can you do this? I've always got the afternoon to sort of sort that out. That's probably the main one. Sometimes Fridays, because most people don't tend to do workshops generally on a Friday. So that's normally a working from home day. So I try and go to the gym on a Friday in the day, so either in the morning or lunchtime-ish. So that's my bit of like getting my head clear and make sure I've got a bit of time for me.
Yeah. How do you find the work-life balance of it? And maybe it's changed over the past 7 years. Yeah,
I think this year I feel I've had a better balance. Even though I've been busier, I've managed it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to go to the gym a bit more this year. As I'm getting older, I need to keep fit if
Oh,
I'm doing the murals and things. Also, my children are teenagers now, so that's obviously made things a little bit easier. And sometimes they'll help me with like cutting things out or prepping for workshops. So that's been quite a nice bonding
nice.
experience. And obviously, as they get older, that does naturally change. But it is tricky. It is tricky because sometimes I think when I choose jobs, and so sometimes I do turn down illustration jobs if it's not the right fit for me, or like ethically it doesn't feel quite right. But if I'm quite lucky with a lot of the things that I do, either there's a bit of flexibility for me to bring myself to it and put in my ideas, working with museums, but also there can be really exciting things, and that's what I struggle with in terms of turning things down when I'm busy, is that I really want to do it. So I just sort of make it work. So it's a bit of a sort of curse and a blessing, I suppose, of I'm quite good at managing my time, but then that means I'm quite worn out by the end of it.
And you mentioned your co-mentor and the Being Freelance community, but do you know other freelance illustrators or other freelancers in your local area? Or
Yeah, so because I did study illustration, there are a few other illustrators from my degree course that we keep in touch. I'm also part of the Association of Illustrators, and we do sort of like regional meetups, so that's quite good to just sort of chat and see how people are getting on. And so Birmingham is the nearest one for me, which is like called Picnic, I think. So I've been to a few of those meetups, and that's really helpful. It is definitely worth sort of trying to connect, I think, with other people that are in the similar industry. But even like Joe, my co-mentor, even though it's graphic design, it's quite similar in terms of sort of contracts and issues that you might hit. So we do sort of talk about that sort of thing, and that's been really helpful.
And you guys meet every month, did you say?
Well, every month, but more recently, because we've been doing this book, it has been a few times like daily.
But
not every day,
but that's because you're collaborating on a project together. But you have like time set aside in your diary every month to get online and chat about your businesses.
Yeah, and we have met, so when we don't live close together, so we meet in London for the day sometimes, or at least once a year, just to have a bit of a social.
So what would you say has been the most challenging bit of being freelance?
I think initially it was that division of when I did lots of different things and trying to really sort of slim it down. I think I've kind of got over that now. I think sometimes it is time, actually, because there's lots of things that I want to do, or I want to spend more time on something than I've got. And I think I get asked that question by students quite a lot, actually. I work very fast when I do things like murals, and they're always really shocked at how quickly I work. And it is kind of an experience thing, but also you have got a deadline and you've got to get it done. So you do become a little bit sort of focused and honed in on what you've got to achieve. And there are sometimes times where I'm like, I wish I just had a little bit more time to kind of work that out a bit more, or maybe redo that. And obviously being a traditional illustrator, sort of painting, it does take longer anyway. I can't just like press a button and it, brings something back or deletes it. So there's time, I think, is sometimes quite challenging. But like I said earlier, I'm getting better at that. And with experience, I go wrong less, or put the tools in place to go wrong less.
Yes.
If that makes sense. So with murals, I paint a mini version before I go in, and I'll project that on the wall and then sketch it out, which means that especially on the mini painted version, I've made all the mistakes that I'm on that version. So when I go in to paint it, it's quite rare that I'll make a mistake. I'll just kind of go in and do it. So it's sort of through experience, you find the tools to help you be quicker and help you not make the mistakes.
Yeah, because you're always creating content, I notice, of showing what it is, both the behind the scenes, the final product, where it is in place, people using or seeing, being around it.
I love that painting, that having that texture, having the sort of pour the paint out, and it's that whole process for me that is so enjoyable. And I see that when I do my workshops, that people might come into the workshops being really stressed, and by the end of the session have calmed right down. The whole process for them, whether it's amazing or not, has had a really impactful effect on them. And for me, that is part of artwork. You know, we are, as humans, are meant to create. And it still blows my mind when you look at a piece of white paper and then I've painted something and I'm like, that wasn't there before. Like, how did that actually happen? That's that, and that
Yes.
craziness. Even though I'm an illustrator, my husband doesn't get it. He's like, yeah, but that's what you do. And I'm like, yeah, but that wasn't there, and it is there now. And look how good, you know, like, we are there to make and create.
I do feel like behind the scenes, no matter what you do, like when I show behind the scenes of me editing podcasts and stuff, it's like people like seeing that. So what's been so I mean, you were getting so lit up when you were describing that. What's been what's been the highlight of being freelance?
So I did a huge mural last year, which was at a museum, and I had to do a scissor lift training course, so I could go up and down on the scissor lift, and it was amazing. I had a whole team of volunteers helping me because it was so big, and they were mostly art students, so that was really nice to do a bit of that mentoring with them. So they sort of asked me questions as I was going along, and again, it's that using the paint, pouring the paint, getting messy, painting on the walls, and huge strokes to create beautiful paintings and artwork and patterns. And it was a play exhibition, so it was all about dinosaurs and meteorites, and there was lighting effects in there and sound at the final thing. So it was just sort of an experience rather than just, you know, a bit of artwork on the wall. You sort of walked in there at the end, and it was a captivating experience for people. So it was a really amazing thing to be part of, and I've been asked back this year, which is really exciting. So yeah, I think the murals, I normally only do a few murals a year. It's not the main thing that I do, but I've been really lucky to do exciting ones when I have done them.
Brilliant. Okay, Jess, I always do this thing where I ask for 3 facts about yourself to make 2 true, 1 a lie, and let me figure out the lie. What do you have for me?
Okay, so I saved a TV superhero at a train station.
Okay.
I dropped a cream cake on the carpet at the House of Commons. I have a rare signed copy of a book by Tony Hart.
Oh my gosh. I don't know whether Tony Hart is known much outside of Britain, but he was on TV. We must be a similar age. And he was on TV when we were kids in the 80s, probably the 70s as well. This older guy, always, it's so gentle and calming, right? Creating art.
Yeah.
So he was huge. And so did you meet him, or you met him? You're nodding.
Yeah. So he was one of my heroes and probably inspired me a lot to become an artist. I used to literally like draw along with him when he was on the telly or try out the different things he'd do. And he came to Nottingham, where I lived in Derbyshire at the time, so it wasn't too far, to do a book signing of one of his books, which was like a draw with me sort of book. You know, he'd sketched out in the book how to draw different things. So we'd gone to buy the book, but he did a draw along in it was a Waterstones, and he did a draw along that I sort of took part in, and then queued up for a long time. There's a big queue to get him to sign the book.
Okay. Did he write a message to you?
No, it was just his name. Did a little like sketch thing.
Okay. That feels true. You saved a TV superhero. What?
Okay, so I was really it's probably about 10 years ago. I was really into the Green Arrow, which is a superhero TV program. And I went to like a Comic-Con in Birmingham with a friend. And as I was going home from Birmingham, my train to rugby goes to London. And on the same platform was this group of people that, you know, the stars that had been at the show. So they were obviously, in my head, they were obviously going to London or somewhere like that. So right next to me, and the next train came along and they got on it, and I realised it was to Coventry. And as they got on, they obviously realised they were on the wrong train, the doors closed, and there was a member of train staff next to me, and I was like, they're really famous and they're on the wrong train. Can you stop it? So he stopped the train and they got off, and they could obviously see through the window that I'd sort of said, stop the train. And so they came over and thanked me when they got off the train that I'd stopped the train for them.
Okay. I mean, that sounds believable as well, because I thought they were about to fall on the tracks and you yanked on their cape. Okay. Well, that sounds true. Okay, so the next one is the Houses of Parliament, so the seat of the UK government, those historic buildings. You were there and put a cream cake on the floor.
They didn't put it on the floor.
You dropped it.
Dropped it on the floor. Yeah, I'd been invited when I was in my role at the gallery. I'd been invited to the House of Parliament for an event, and it was one of their function rooms, but it was very snazzy, had all, the crown or whatever it is on the crest on the carpet and on all the chairs, and they had like a buffet, and I had a cup of tea with a saucer, but there wasn't any tables to put anything, so I got a cream cake, and I was trying to balance everything, and I put my cream cake on my saucer, but then when I lifted my cup up, it just fell, and it had loads of cream on the top and splattered like face down on the like beautiful carpet. I just sort of ran off.
These are all so believable. You see, I believe that you were at that event. That event sounds real, but is the cream cake incident the lie? Tony Hart, why not? Absolutely, why not? You would stand in a queue. You would get it signed. That feels true. He's a legend. I think it's between the cream cake and the TV superheroes. I can't believe you would make up the TV superheroes. And yet, I think that's the lie. I think that's the lie. I think the cream cake and Tony Hart are true. TV superhero the lie.
No, I never met Tony Hart.
Oh, it breaks my heart.
No, I didn't. I really wanted to, but I never did. So, yeah, I did actually save a superhero.
And importantly, you did drop a cream cake in the Houses of Parliament.
I actually did.
Which
yeah,
I'm pleased I'm pleased
so
to hear.
Embarrassed.
This is why they're spending so much money to do that place up. It's all the cream cakes that have been dropped over the years. That place must stink. Okay, well done. You win. Now, if you could tell your younger self one thing about being freelance, what would that be?
I think take your time, because you're not going to stick with what you're doing necessarily, forever. It's going to change. The world's going to change. For me, COVID did sort of change everything really of my direction of where I was going. So you don't know what's going to happen. So just do what you can in the moment, maybe. And I think also when I speak to younger people, I always tell them to look at people that you admire and see what they're doing. And is there anything that sort of resonates with you that you can kind of emulate in your own way? And I think that's really helpful as well.
Nice. Jess, it's been so good to hear your story. Thank you so much for coming on. Go to beingfreelance.com. There'll be links through so that you can find Jessi Illustrates online. Go follow on Instagram. Check out the website. And if you're ever nearby, because we did a workshop with Jessi Illustrates in April this year, and it was so much fun. Finally, after all these years of watching you do murals and things during co-working, including on the scissor lift, so good, we finally got to do it in person, and you were brilliant, and it was awesome.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
Yes, if you can ever get to a live workshop, go along. I highly recommend it. She might even let you have a go on the badge machine. But for now, thanks so much, and all the best being freelance.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. We are done. Hope you enjoyed that. I meant to mention earlier that Tiny Experiments is our next book club read in the Being Freelance book club. How to Live Freely in a Goal-Obsessed World. That's in the community, beingfreelance.com. Also at the website, please do sign up for my emails, which are designed to help you with your freelance business. Lots of people like them. I'd like you to get it too if you don't already, beingfreelance.com. Anyway, back with another one of these very soon indeed. But in the meantime, you have a great week. Being Freelance.